Hi everyone, my name is Phil and welcome to PhilDoes3D. I'm a multimedia and 3D artist and I stream on Twitch weekdays from 5 p.m. Pacific time in the US. That's 4 p.m. now that daylight savings is finished for you guys. 11 a.m. in Australia and 12 a.m. in the UK. Let's pull up 3D Studio Max and load up the file we were working on yesterday. Hope you guys are well. Come on, Max. All right. So yesterday we were working on these, the bases of these lights. So we might continue doing some work on that. I just wanted to dirty up the tops of them. And what we'll do then is we will copy this one to this side and rotate it so that the texture isn't noticeably the same. So let's jump into Mari. Load up our column from yesterday. Should be able to finish this column off pretty quickly. It's only just a dirt layer for the top sections of the column that I want to work on. All right, let's throw on a new layer. Always work with a new layer. And let's just rotate that around a little bit. Move it in. So it's just the top sections here that I just want to dirty up a little bit. So let's find a good dirt map. Let's see what this one looks like. Okay, this one will probably work well. Let's just scale that back a bit. I'm going to rotate it around just a little bit. I am going to go into our project tab and turn on edge masking. We'll rotate our model around, and again, I'm not working directly down on the model. I'm angling it slightly back. Okay. Okay, so we've got our new layer here. Let's just paint that in. And then across the top here. Right, and that bit there. Remember now to hit the Alt key to bake that down, because until you hit the Alt key, it's not assigned to the UVs. All right. Now let's work on the bottom section here. Okay, I'm going to angle it up. And again, because we're working on a separate layer, if you make a mistake or you don't like what you've done, it's easy enough to remove it without destroying the underlying texture that we've been working on. So I'm just going to hit the Alt key to bake that down. We'll rotate our model around, angle it down, and paint in our texture. Okay, press the Alt key to bake that down. Let's just move that out of the way for a moment. Okay, now you see this line here has happened because we were angling the model this way, and so we missed those corners. So it's easy enough again to fix. Just angle our model slightly back and paint that in. Bake that down. Okay, move our texture aside and let's work on our layer style. Let's pull that right back. Something like that. And that's really all the work we had to do to finish off that texture. So let's turn off edge masking again and go back into our image manager. I'm just going to quickly save our file. Okay, now go into our channels and we're going to right click, export flattened, export everything flattened. It should remember our texture name from yesterday, and it has. In our directory rework folder, we're just going to export all and overwrite that file. Okay, let's jump back into Max. If it goes black, just go into your material editor, find the texture and reload it, and it pops right back in. You can close that down now. Let's go into full screen here. It's easy to work in. Okay, now I want to select this and isolate it. I'm going to ungroup it. Just check that I've selected the right part, and I have. I'm just going to regroup that subsection. I'm just going to call this one old and underscore delete. That's just as a reminder to me that I'm going to be deleting it. I'm going to end the isolation mode. Now I'm going to isolate this column here because we haven't done these soft edges. Remember, we always have to soften up these hard edges because it's unnatural to be that sharp. So let's do that right now. I'm going to collapse the stack to an editable poly, and I'm going to start selecting edges. So the ones along the top, the ones along the side, remembering to get the one at the back, the ones along these outer edges, and the back there. Same here with the bottom of that edge. That funky black and white look is just the shadowing in Max. The temporary default shadowing that happens in Max. And because I'm working in DirectX 9 mode, because of a problem with NVIDIA's drivers and DirectX 11 at the moment, it's causing that funky shading to happen. So it's not on the texture, it's just in the shading that's happening in Max. That edge there. Okay, now we've got to grab the bottom edges here. So that one, that corner, that corner, that corner, that edge, and that corner. Now we need that corner, that one. I'm good, feels good. How are you? How's things? I like your username. Okay, we'll grab that corner right there. So we've got those 4 corners there. Now let's look at the base part. I'm going to grab that one, no problems. I'm glad you're well. It's always good to hear when people are doing well or doing good. That one. Good to see you back again. And that one there. We won't do the bottom edge because that's actually resting against the tiles. So we have those edges done. Just double checking that I've got everything I need. All those outside edges, all those edges, and those ones. Okay. Let's go into a modified tab. Put a chamfer on. We don't want to chamfer it up that much, so I'm working on the column base for those lamps that sit up on top of the garden terrace. I'm still doing the garden terrace. Once I've just finished this chamfer, I'll exit isolation mode and you can see what I've been working on. So I'm just going to pop that up to 4 iterations and just pull that back a little bit. So we've been working on our garden terrace, feels good. And we've just been working on our columns that sit underneath of these 3 light fittings. I'm just going to collapse that stack again. All right. So yeah, we've been working on our garden terrace, texturing it up. We don't have a lot of texturing work left to do. We've just got to do these outside edges, banisters. Thanks, buddy. Glad you like it. So what we're going to do now is, instead of texturing up this one again, we're going to cheat and grab this one, make a copy of this one by holding down the Shift key and dragging it over. Make it a copy, not an instance. I'm going to go into my hierarchy tab and turn on Effect Pivot and send it to Object to make sure that it's in the middle. I've got edge snapping turned on, or angle snapping. I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees, so we're looking at the opposite side. And I'm going to jump quickly into the top viewport. Position it where our old one here is. Thanks for the follow, feels good. I appreciate that. Very good of you. I always appreciate it when people follow my Twitch channel. I'm just going to move that into position. I'm going to rename this light base right so that we don't get too confused. And I'm going to select the old one, which is old, and delete, and remove that one. We'll jump back into our 3D viewport here. So now you can see that you don't notice that these textures are the same because we've rotated this one around 180 degrees. So it saved us having to retexture this column. We can cheat and use the same texture, just rotate it around. And you'll find that I do that quite a bit when I do modeling, just to save some time, because texturing up an object properly can take a while. And if you can save yourself some time, then you should do that. No one will notice because, as I said, the opposite sides are facing forward and backwards. So as you move around the model, you're not going to notice that these textures have been repeated. Okay. Let's just save our file here. I actually feel as if this model, once we'll continue doing some texture work, I may create another angel statue for up the top here, because I think a little bit more interest here in the corners would probably be good. Oh, I've been modeling for over 10 years. I started modeling many years ago. I worked in architectural visualization. I've worked for a few games companies. Yeah, I've been doing modeling and multimedia for a long time, for more than 10 years. I've always loved doing modeling, so multimedia is cool too. I do some web-based design stuff as well, but my main focus now is on 3D, so 3D modeling, and I've always used Max. Blender is another good free piece of software if you wanted to do 3D modeling. A lot of people like Maya. If you're a student or a teacher, Autodesk will let you use Max free of charge. They'll give you a 3-year license to use the software. You can download it from their website. It's used a lot in architectural visualization, 3D Studio Max. Maya is used more for character work. But yeah, no, I've been doing it for a while. You do 3D at all? Feels good? So we've saved our file. Let's work on these, I think. I'm just going to isolate that object so that we can more easily work with it. I'm going to ungroup it. I'm going to select that again. Oh, why are we grouping again? Okay. I'm going to select this top part, which is a bit that I actually want to work on. No, that's cool. I mean, I like watching people doing 3D work too. It's always fun to watch how people create something. Okay, so I've selected that top part. I'm going to isolate it again. You can go multiple times with isolation to zoom in on the bit that you want. I'm going to select the base. I'm going to turn that into an edit poly. Always work in edit poly, not edit mesh, because edit poly gives you many more options to work with. It's a better format to work in. And I'm going to attach these pieces together. I'm going to exit isolation mode. I'm going to call this one SML for small, BAL for balcony, COLUMN for column. It just helps to name your objects so that you don't get lost in this huge list of things that you're working on. So naming them up helps you to find them again later. That's just a list of all the objects that are being used at the moment in this model. So now we've named our column here, small balcony column. I'm just going to copy that name. So what we normally do, as usual, we throw down a base color. So I'm going to go into my material editor, use our base gray color that we've been using for everything. This is just a color that I throw down on a model before I start painting the texture over the top of it. It's that one there. I'm going to assign that to the material, to the model. And again, it's just a base gray, then we'll paint over the outside of it. Okay. Now we're going to throw an unwrap UVW on top of that. I'm just going to turn off seams so it doesn't get in the way of what I'm working on. We're going to change the map channel to channel 2. We're going to move the UVs across. Open our UV editor. We're going to select all of our UVs. Go to mapping, flatten mapping. The default values are fine. Okay. Deselect our UVs. Then we'll go to render. render to texture. We're going to use existing channel 2, which is the one we just created. We're going to add a diffuse map. We're going to set the texture size. We'll do 2048. Again, this is probably a bit big for the size of this model piece, but we can always reduce it down in Photoshop later on. And it's always better to work with a larger texture size than a too small a texture size. You can always reduce the larger one. It's harder to fix if it's too small. We're going to set our path to our rework folder that we've been working in. We're calling it small balcony column. I'm just going to get rid of the diffuse map that Max adds on the end. We're saving it as a target file .tga. 24-bit is fine. Okay, we'll render that out. Just ignore that. It's just complaining I don't have a map slot selected, but I don't want a map slot. It just Max is warning you that you're rendering a texture out and you haven't assigned it to a map slot yet in the material editor, but we do that manually. So, okay, we can close down our render to texture. Let's open our material now and create that map for it that Max was just complaining about. I always work my way down, so I know that the one at the bottom is the last object I worked on, so that texture is for that object. Again, it just helps to keep me organized. I'm going to throw in a standard map, a bitmap. We're going to go into our rework folder where we just saved that file to. And small column, that's the one that we just rendered. We'll pipe that into the diffuse channel. We will show shaded material in viewport and show realistic. That's just a good habit to get into so that when we assign it, we can see it. If we don't turn those two on, we won't see the texture assigned to the model. Okay, we're going to assign that material to the model. It's going to go funky, so we're going to go into our Utilities tab, Channel Info. We're going to copy UVs from channel 2 into channel 1. That will fix that. And now we're finished with channel 2, so we can clear that out. Again, as I said, you don't have to clear out channel 2. You can leave it in, but it increases the file size. So if you're not going to use it, you might as well clear it out and free up the file size a bit. Okay, so now that we've rendered out to texture, we've got our object selected. We're going to go File, Export, Export Selected into our rework folder. We're going to call it small column. We're going to save it as an OBJ file. That's fine. Export. Okay. Now we're going to jump into Mari. Make sure our project here is saved in case we want to come back at any time to work on it again. We're going to create a new project. Now again, I use Mari to do my texture painting. You don't have to. You can use Photoshop. That's a lot of people like to work with Photoshop as well. I work with Photoshop to do recoloring and color correction work. Substance Painter is another very good 3D model painting program from Algorithmic. So we've got our name of our project. I'm going to load up the OBJ we just exported from 3D Studio Max in our rework folder, and that one there. I'm just going to change my temp directory. That's just for my housekeeping. We're going to create a color map. We're going to create a 2K color map. We'll go OK. Thanks. I'm glad you like the models on my website. That's not everything I've created, but a lot of the stuff that I have on my 3D stores, you'll find there. The selection of in the gallery on my website is just a small selection of some of the stuff I've made over the years. We're going to turn flat shading on. I tend to work more with geometry like buildings and that type of thing than less so with character work. I don't generally do character art like people and things like that. So let's bring in our texture that we just exported from render to texture. So we're going to import into layer stack. I'm going to find that texture in our rework folder. If you can't see anything, it's because Mari defaults to .tiff. Just pop a star in there and everything will show up. Small balcony column.tga, that's the one we rendered to texture. Okay, and there it is. And again, I turned flat shading on so I could see the texture more easily. Generally it comes in like that, which means you see the shading, but trying to work if you're painting in a texture like that is too difficult. So you always turn on flat shading. It'll just make your life easier. Let's pull in some texture maps for Mari. So I'm going to go into my textures folder. And grab all of these. We're grabbing more than we need, but as I've said, Mari doesn't load these textures up. It just loads a reference to them, so you might as well grab them all because you're not going to be using your computer's memory. So you don't have to worry about that. And it's always good to have a large selection of textures to work with. Once these are loaded in, I'm just going to grab another directory, which are my dirt maps that I use for a lot of my work. When I dirty up an object, I always tend to work with the same group of textures. And like I was saying, it's always better if you're working on a large model like that garden terrace, and you've been using specific textures, to stick with the same textures to keep uniformity happening throughout the model. Otherwise it's going to look start to look a bit odd if you start mixing and matching too many different types of textures. So to keep some uniformity, try to stick with the same texture maps. That won't always be the case with models. Sometimes you will want completely different textures for different parts of the model, but in this case, to keep it uniform, you're best to stick to the same textures you've been using for the other objects. Okay, let's start painting up this. Let's zoom in a bit. I'm zooming in by holding down the Alt key on the keyboard and the right mouse button. Okay, let's find a texture. So we're going to start by throwing on a new layer, and layers are just like layers in Photoshop. You can turn them on and off and delete them. Always work on a new layer. That way if you make a mistake, you don't like what you've done, you won't destroy your underlying texture, you can just delete the layer. So let's grab this one here, I think. Just going to rotate that around. I'll do that by holding down the Control key. And again, rotating to the middle will rotate more quickly. Rotating to the edge, you get a lot more control and you can rotate it a lot more slowly. So now I'm going to scale this up until it just about fits the model. Like that. Let's rotate it around a bit. Working on a new layer, I'm going to paint that in. And you'll notice I haven't got masking turned on yet. I will turn that on a little later, but not at this stage, to do the base of the texture, to do the underlying texture. Okay, so we've painted that in. And remember, with Mari, until you hit the Alt key, nothing is baked down, so press the Alt key to bake it down. Rotate our model around. Again, I'm going to work on the four sides and then come back and blend them in the middle, on the corners. So we're just going to rotate our model around, move it over. And it's important at this stage not to scale the model up or down, and to try and keep everything uniform. I'm going to scale the texture up just a touch. Okay. I'm going to paint that in. Yeah, but try and keep everything the same. Don't when you're trying to paint uniformly on a column like this, it's best not to scale up the model or to scale up the texture too much. Okay, we'll bake that down. Work to this side. That's texture stretching. That's happened because it's not painting directly flat onto the model. And again, we'll fix all of that up soon. All right, paint that in. Remember, guys, if you've got any questions, anything you're not sure about, feel free to ask me in the chat. If I can help, I'm happy to. If you just want to pop in and say hello, I always appreciate that too, like Feels Good did. Bake that down. Or if you just want to lurk and watch, that's completely fine too. Okay. Let's paint that in. Now with these columns, they are all the same, but there are a lot of them, so we can't really cheat too much and just use one texture. We're going to have to create 3 or 4 varying textures that we can then move around the outside of that balcony to make it less obvious that we're reusing textures or reusing the same texture. And it has actually destroyed this side on me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my project folder and turn on edge mask, and that'll just preserve the sides a little bit better for me. It won't overpaint them like it did just there on this side. Let's paint that in. Bake it down. All right. I'm just checking that we have everything lining up, and we do. Although we do have to fix that side just there. So again, I'm just going to rotate the model around. And paint that in here just to fix up that bit of texture error that we have here. Bake it down, and now we have all of our bricks lining up. Again, we've got this little problem here, so again I'm just going to line up our model and our texture, and paint that in. And bake it down. Okay, now we have everything lining up, no texture problems happening, so let's start working on the top now. Now again, I'm not angling the model directly down like this, I'm angling it slightly back a little. Just going to rotate that texture around and start painting in these top sections. Again, we've got masking turned on, so it doesn't destroy the work we've done on the sides by accident. And with these top sections, I don't want these lines here that where the bricks meet to show, so I'm going to paint in a section, bake it down, move my texture down, and then paint those lines out. And again, we're going to be throwing a dirt map over the top of this again to make it blend a little better. So, and again, we've got this line happening here, which I don't want, so I'm going to move my texture in and paint it out. Bake it down. Just want to change up that middle bit there a little bit, and this bit up here a little bit. Okay. Now we're just going to fix this line in here where it didn't quite, where the model was angled away and it couldn't paint it in, didn't see it. So we're just going to rotate our texture around. Again, you'll notice I'm not, make sure it's angled up. If I hit this side here, it will paint on it because it's not masked as you see in the red here. So make sure you angle it up so that the masking takes effect, and that way you won't accidentally paint over that area. I'm just going to paint that in through here. And bake that down. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the base here. I'm going to angle it up so that masking is protecting that part of the model. Rotate our texture around so it follows the direction of the base here as well as we can. Just paint that in. Bake it down, rotate the model, rotate the texture. Again, make sure you're angling the model up. We'll just go around this bottom edge here. And I just keep rotating the texture to make sure it follows the grain of the stone follows the direction of the underlying model. Okay, I'll rotate that around, paint that in. Just want to get rid of that little bit of white there, I don't like that. Bake that down. And now we're just going to fix the opposite sides here, so let's rotate our model. This is the base. I will texture that up, although you won't see it because it's resting against the tiles. Let's rotate that around. Move the texture out. Paint that in. You notice I haven't baked that down yet. You don't have to bake it down, but remember, if you move your model and before you bake it down, you're going to move the texture. So before you rotate your model, press the Alt key to bake it down. Let's rotate it around to this side here. Rotate it around. Bake it down. Okay. Now, because Mari works, we're working in projects with Mari, even though we have to create 3 or 4 different versions of this texture for the different columns. All we have to do is turn layers on and off and add some new layers to make a different texture without having to repeat everything again. So working in a paint program is really invaluable that way. You can mix up your textures easily and quickly. Okay, so we have all of those painted in. We have all of those painted in. Let's just quickly do the base here. Again, I've angled my model up. And again, like I said, this base is resting against the tiles. It's not going to be seen, but we will paint it in anyway, just to be thorough and complete. And just in case, if somebody wants to maybe knock one of the columns over, it's textured up and they won't have a problem with this ugly texture on the bottom. You never know what somebody might want to do with the model. They may want to knock one of our columns over, change up the model a little bit. Okay, let's throw on a new layer. Let's save our project just to be on the safe side. We're going to go back into our image manager. We're working on a new layer. Let's grab a dirt texture now. Let's see what this one looks like. Maybe, where could I use you? Now I'm noticing here we've got a little bit of stretching happening. I'm going to fix that up right now. So I'm just going to pull that texture I'm going to go back into the layer we were just working on. Pull that texture we were just working with back in. We're going to rotate it around, move our model up. I'm going to line that up there.